My name is Donna Airoldi. I am the Senior Editor for Transportation at Business Travel News. I am here with Aurelie Duprez from Areka Consulting. Aurelie, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Areka?
Sure, and thank you for having me, Donna. So I'm a founding partner at Areka. We created the firm 15 years ago, and we're a consulting firm, and we're supporting buyers on all of their travel projects. So that includes building strategy, that includes sourcing suppliers, TMCs, hotels, online booking tools, and airlines. And in many cases, we're also asked to support our clients in the implementation of those suppliers. So airline sourcing is one of our practice lines. And that's the reason why I was so happy to have this conversation with Morgan from Share this morning in our breakout session.
Great, and it was a very good session.
It was very crowded, actually. We had many buyers, good level of engagement, and I think the fact that it's a buyer-only session gives them a safe space to share their challenges and also the creative strategies that they've developed. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Let's jump into some of the trends that you're seeing when it comes to air sourcing. One of them that you started with was disruptions and flight suspensions. We know there are conflict zones going on around the world. Talk a little bit about how that is impacting air programs and maybe how some buyers might need to incorporate that into their negotiations.
When I started in this industry 15 years ago, sourcing airlines was quite simple. We were negotiating discounts on an O&D basis, and that was it. So it was very much focused about price. Now, I think the accountability of the travel buyers has changed today, and they're supposed to take into account not only price, but also sustainability and service. And as we said this morning, travel disruptions have increased. Travelers are facing them every day when they're on the road. One of them, for instance, is the fact that with the geopolitical crisis that we know, particularly in the Middle East, airlines have had to change their routing, and they had to add additional fuel stops, for instance, because there are a number of airspaces that they can no longer fly, for instance, over Israel and Iran these days. So as a consequence, direct consequence for the travelers is an additional flight time of 1.5 hours to 3 hours for the flights between the EU and India. So what Morgan said this morning as a buyer is that she constantly needs to get that kind of information from the airlines in order to be able to share it with the traveler community, communicate, so that the travelers get better prepared for their trips, and so that they understand what's going on, and so that they're able to differentiate between the responsibility of the TMC, the airline, and also simply the geopolitical situation. So it has a big impact for the travel buyers, and it's definitely a new area that they need to address as part of their scope.
And I'm imagining with the extended connections and the length of flight times that may impact what travelers are available to choose when it comes to cabin class. And that could increase the costs of certain trips too.
Definitely. I'm also seeing an overall trend of duty of care being very carefully looked at in the decisions. And take, for instance, with the buyer that was speaking this morning, their policy says, well, it's business class after 4 hours, and they're not encouraging travelers to fly connect, even if it's cheaper. One of the reasons is comfort. One of the reasons is also safety, because the less takeoff and landings you need to incur, the better it is for safety. So that's, overall, it's no longer all about price. But travel buyers, travel managers really have to factor in safety as part of their daily jobs.
But price still is important.
Yes.
And you guys mentioned this morning some of the supply chain issues and some delivery challenges with from OMEs.
What I've been hearing since April is really the big concern from travel buyers and also airlines to some extent is what is the impact of the new tariffs going to be on the entire supply chain and eventually on the fare levels. So in April, there was an announcement, for instance, that there would be new tariffs on raw material, but also on commercial aircrafts and jet engines. So that very simply leads to those aircrafts being more expensive for airlines to buy. Delta in June announced that there would be a delay in the purchases of aircrafts that they've done, and that this could eventually lead to thousands of cancelled flights over the summer. So that's definitely something that we can expect. We can expect impact on the reliability of operations, and we can expect as well impacts on the fare levels. And that's something that the buyers have a lot of difficulty to overcome, because they're seeing the published fare increasing. They're seeing the discounts being eroded when they negotiate with airlines. And that's also linked to the challenges that the airline industry is facing. So there's not much they can do on the pricing side. And I'm seeing most of them now really spending time and focus on developing new strategies to better manage demand. So since they can't do much on the pricing side, of course they're using detailed data, and we support them in doing that, and we're running our tools to help them identify where are the top terms where the pricing conditions have downgraded the most, etc. Once that's done, they really focus on demand. They use senior sponsorship to communicate to the traveler community. They include messages in the OBT, for instance, so that they really convey the message that travel has to be purposeful, that travelers shouldn't travel when they really don't have to. And that definitely has the highest impact on both cost, but also sustainability and eventually the traveler well-being.
Which are trends we've seen over the past few years. What are you currently seeing when it comes to sustainability in air sourcing? And has there been a shift?
You're right to mention that SAF has been extremely popular a few years ago, and now it's quite challenged within the buyer community, both because of availability and also impact. When we were running RFPs 10 years ago, we started to include, at the buyer's request, we started to include questions around sustainability. But those questions, and particularly the airline responses, were not used much. They were simply transferred to the ESG department, and you could wonder if anyone was reading them at all. So it was creating a lot of frustration on the airline side, because they were taking time to build the answers. And on the buyer side, it wasn't really used. And now I'm seeing that's changing. And what we're doing for most of our clients is we're developing scorecards with closed questions. So typically you would ask, what's the average age of your fleet? And if it's 0 to 5, you get 5 points. If it's 5 to 10 years, you get 3 points. So you see how it goes. And this allows buyers to get to a scoring by airline. And it's interesting actually to say that there can be additional dimensions to sustainability. It can be, we can include other dimensions like D&I or service quality, for instance. And at the end of the sourcing event, you get an overall scoring of each airline. And that is something that can be used in conjunction with price. And typically what our customers would do is they would use both dimensions, see how an airline performs on price, see how an airline performs on sustainability, and then design an overall performance, depending on the weighting that they've decided. And that leads them to build a list of preferred partners that are given benefits by the company. It can be access to travelers, can be preferred status in the OBT, it can be a promotion, internal promotion, or staff agreements, for instance. So a number of benefits that can be customized by the company. And that's really something that the airlines are responding positively to, because they understand that the efforts that they're doing on the sustainability front also has a meaning and also has an impact when it comes to contracting. And that's one of the things that I've seen work the best in terms of building strong partnerships between airlines and buyers.
It's good to hear, because there's been some concern that the pedal has been, the foot has been taken off the pedal a little bit with sustainability.
And I'm happy to say that's not what I'm seeing from my clients, because not only they're really trying to include sustainability as part of the sourcing process, but they're also improving on the way they calculate and monitor CO2 emissions. And that's a challenge, I must say, because there is a variety of different methodologies.
So many calculators.
Exactly. So we help them navigate through that jungle. We build travel dashboards for them. We have developed our own methodology that's now certified. And they need granular data to be able to differentiate airline A from airline B on the same route. That's something that was not possible in the past with the DEFRA methodology. Now they can. And it's also important to reward the airline's efforts, because the one that spend money on buying fuel-efficient aircrafts or that build staff agreements, etc., they really need to see that this has an impact and this is factored in by travel buyers.
Now, I know this is a topic that has been in the news the past few years, but one that came up today as well, and that is air sourcing in a world with NDC, new distribution capability, which has led to continuous pricing. And what are you seeing in terms of with your clients and what was discussed this morning, how NDC is playing a role in airline negotiations?
I was really happy to hear some positive stories of NDC fares being available and used by some companies, because you don't hear many of those these days. My clients are particularly concerned and frustrated by the lack of availability of the NDC fares in their OBTs. And then when they go back to the OBT, sometimes it's because of the TMC and sometimes it's because of the airline. And it's very hard for them to identify the real responsibility of each player. So what we often do is start by making an audit between what's available in the OBT and what's available on the web. Because that's a noise that most travel buyers and travel managers get from the traveler population. I found cheaper fares on the web, etc. So we do that properly with a lot of discipline, document it, and it's actually yielding good results in the way that there are few cases where we find cheaper fares on the web, but there are. And that's likely to be because some NDC fares on some airlines or some flight types in some OBTs are not available. So that's the kind of case that buyers can then take to their TMC airline OBTs to identify what is exactly the root cause and act upon it. So that's been quite efficient. And in terms of continuous pricing, I think the airline's promise is that it's going to be beneficial to buyers. Naturally, continuous pricing is only available in an NDC environment.
Right. So
there's still some progress to be made to make sure that that NDC environment is properly set up in every OBT for every buyer. I'm also not yet seeing many bundles, fare bundles in the contracts. One of the fears that we heard this morning was that it could potentially yield to some buyers, some travelers using services they wouldn't need, and that they would eventually pay for. So that's a potential risk. And we need to ensure that the services that are proposed to travelers are really the services that travelers need, like everything that makes their journey easier, more comfortable, smoother thing, priority, lounge access, Wi-Fi on board, for instance. So
Right.
that's typically the kind of benefit that's going to be needed. So I think there's still a lot of progress that can be made in terms of the NDC benefits for travel buyers. I'm seeing most legacy TMCs investing a lot on their back office systems to make NDC fares available. So we're going to get there at some point. I'm also seeing the new players using that ability to access the NDC content as a strong differentiator. And it's true that they're starting fresh, so they have interesting advantages to offer in that area. So I think we'll get there. There's still a bit of work on the industry side.
Right. It is definitely a work in progress.
Exactly.
Are you seeing your clients, are you working with your clients on how to change negotiation tactics with continuous pricing? Does continuous pricing make a difference or not?
Not really, not
Okay.
yet, because on the airline side, the discounts that are negotiated as part of the contracts are valid on continuous pricing.
Okay.
So the focus is really more about getting access to those fares, which is a bit on the side compared to the sourcing topic. And that's not exactly something that's addressed as part of the airline contracts.
As the negotiations. Okay. You guys touched on the RFP process this morning. And if we could talk about that for just a minute. It's a long process. We all know that.
It's a very long process.
And then usually for airlines, and for hotels it's less, but for airlines you could usually get a contract for 2 to 3 years. Is that still the case? Are airlines pushing back on that?
Airlines pushing back. So first of all, the companies looking for 3 years deals are usually companies that spend at least $100 million on air a year. So think about large corporate clients. And that's the reason why they want to go for 3 years, because it takes them almost a year from beginning to end to source. Between the time they're building their strategy, launching the RFP, then there are 2 or 3 rounds of negotiation, award, rates loading, contract signing. So think 9 months to 12 months. So it's a very long process. And for that reason, they don't want to start again when they're just finishing. So traditionally, they've usually liked to go for 3 years. However, with the uncertainty that we know, and the fact that we need to keep in mind we're negotiating discounts. It's not like for hotels. We're negotiating discounts that are based on published reference fares that move with time. So those published reference fares will increase over the course of the contract. And there's nothing travel buyers can do about it. So we're acting in a very volatile context. And for that reason, I've seen a number of buyers pushing back from the 3-year strategy, going back to 2 years. And in most cases, airlines were also happy to do that because they were also managing uncertainty on their end. So that's been a trend that I've seen in most cases. But it's true that airline RFPs remain something a bit heavy. It shouldn't be. That's also the reason why we've developed tools to really automate the analysis, because at some point you need to take the entire spend data, historical spend data, the entire all the airline contracts and new proposals, calculate the savings, the baseline savings, the new savings, calculate the incremental savings, etc. So it's very data-driven, data-intensive. That's why using tools and to some extent using consulting makes the process easier. But there are also a number of validation steps that are needed internally when you decide that this airline will now be a preferred partner, or that this airline will no longer be because there's been a poor pricing proposal or they didn't perform well on the sustainability front. That's the kind of decision that needs to be validated at the highest level, because it's quite sensitive, as you can imagine. Because that RFP process is so heavy, I'm seeing buyers doing a really good job at maintaining the contracts over time and optimizing those contracts beyond the pure RFP exercise. And that's been very efficient. because it's impossible to imagine that you would source and then not look at the contracts for 2 years.
Exactly.
There are new routes that are coming up because of business needs. And also on the airline side, they are regularly reshaping their pricing policies or opening a new route. So it's a
Capacity
constant
changes.
exactly capacity. It's a constant dialogue that also allows to touch not only on price but also on capacity, safety issues. That's also what we heard this morning. So I think that continuous maintenance is something that we're going to see in an increased manner. And it's good for the industry because it also allows, I mean, we talked about partnership a lot this morning between buyers and airlines. And I think that's where we're heading to make sure that the airlines understand the corporate needs. And also on the corporate side, it's important that buyers understand the airline challenges, particularly in our troubled times. Right. So I think that partnership approach is something that will yield good results.
I think that pretty much recaps most of what you guys discussed this morning. And I want to thank you as well for sitting with us at BTN TV at the Business Travel Show Europe. And hopefully we will see you again here next year.
Absolutely. I'll be there. Thank you so much, Donna.
Thank you.